Will you join me? Our prayer this morning is by Heather Januels. They once dwelled among us, the people of memory.
They who knew us, they who taught us, they who heard us, they who loved us.
They touch our lives time and again through their presence and their absence.
Through familiar scents and favorite songs, through old stories and renewed sorrow.
As the earth turns and leaves fall, we reach back to renew the bonds between us.
With hearts and hands open, we hold on to love, ever stronger than death.
We reach back in gratitude and understanding. Without our time together, the pain and the joy.
We would never be who we are today. We would have little to pass on ourselves.
Without fear, with thanksgiving, and with hope for all that awaits.
We remember those who have gone before. We honor the circle of life and death and our place within this sacred thread.
Amen. Our reading this morning is entitled The Growing Season by Teresa Honey Youngblood. The 6-year-old and the 9-year-old co-creators of our neighborhood garden this past spring and summer survey the backyard plot after our first good hard frost. Ooh, that's a lot of dead stuff, says one. Guess we're done here, says the other. They make their way to the far corner where a drooping pumpkin vine has revealed a few small orange orbs that we had missed in previous pickings. I stand over a daunting patch of blackened dahlias. The dying back shows evidence of our months of enthusiasm, but also horticultural ineptitude. Trowels and forks here and there lost these past weeks, months, until the weeds that obscured them were laid low. Heaps of too tall flowers that grew leggy for inadequate sunshine, then flopped over into barely discernible paths. Twisted, odd, angled stems of cabbages and collards planted too shallow. Mats of green mush where crowded lettuces succumbed to the cold, bare soil. I see so much we could have done differently. So many mistakes made in haste. So many times I chose not to weed. So many corners cut and no way to do them over until the next spring. How many seasons does a gardener get? 10, 20, 30 maybe, depending on when they start. This finitude makes the regret over missed opportunities and poor choices all the keener. There is relief and remorse equally in my heart as the growing season comes to a close. Then the 9-year-old is at my side again, attempting mightily to whisper through excitement, "Look! Look!" And I look where they are pointing. There I see a trio of goldfinches, annual migrants from more northern climes, hanging upside down to better reach the seeds in the gracefully nodding brown heads of spent sunflowers. And just below that, on a bright tithonia blossom, a monarch. Somehow both flower and butterfly spared from the cold snap. The insect is lingering over the precious late-season nectar, even as gray clouds gather overhead. I think for a moment how this weedy chaos, these beds of failed attempts, look to the wild things. It looks like food. It looks like shelter. Imperfect but earnestly done, with best efforts, tools on hand, and our collective wisdom such that it was. It looks like a place of giving. Children and grown-ups and creation itself was tended here and fed. So if you haven't seen the pictures yet, a group of us from the meeting house dressed up as pirates on Halloween and gave out candy from a treasure chest up at the community center. I adore how seriously you took the costume theme. And I loved having a chance to do something not at all serious with you. We are a very playful bunch when we get the chance. Halloween is playful, even though it is full of death. It makes fun of death, not in the taunting kind of way, but in the playful spirit that says, we do not have to be so afraid of death. We can dress up as ghosts and skeletons and zombies. Halloween's origins date back to the ancient Celtic festival of Samhain. The Celts who lived 2,000 years ago, mostly in the area that's now Ireland and the United Kingdom and northern France, celebrated their New Year on November 1st. This day marked the end of the summer and the harvest and the beginning of the dark, cold winter, a time of year that was often associated with human death. Celts believed that on the night before the New Year, the boundary between the worlds of the living and the dead became blurred. On the night of October 31st, they celebrated Samhain, when it was believed that the ghosts of the dead returned to earth. Since the late Middle Ages, the dead have been remembered in Christian countries in Europe and elsewhere around the globe in formal church services on All Souls Day. It is a day to pray for the dead. In Celtic lands, the Christian tradition of All Souls gradually blended with and supplanted older Celtic rites. It's widely believed that the church was attempting to replace the Celtic festival of the dead with a related church-sanctioned holiday. But pagan influences remain strong at this time of year. And other cultures, too, have created special holidays and festivals to honor a connection between the dead and the living. Many of them fall at this season when the days are getting shorter, the nights longer, the leaves are falling from the trees, and the harvests are coming to an end. Nature's reminders of the cycle of life. In India, Pitri Paksha, Fortnight of the Ancestors, is a 16 lunar day period when Hindus pay homage to their ancestors. In China, the double ninth festival in the autumn of the year is a time in which living descendants honor their deceased ancestors. And during another Buddhist and Taoist festival, the Ghost Festival, the deceased are believed to visit the living. In Latvia, after the fall equinox festival of Mikkeli, a quiet shadow period begins. At this time, the shadows, spirits of the dead, visit the farmsteads to look over the life of the household and to bring blessings for future life and work. In Mexico, the Day of the Dead, El Dia de los Muertos, is observed on November 1st and 2nd. During this festival, the dead are not feared, but welcomed. Altars are built and decorated with flowers and photos of departed family members. Cakes and candies in the shape of skulls, skeletons, coffins, and gravestones sweeten the concept of death. One Wiccan ritual during the Feast of Samhain is a potluck supper with a place set for each person present, as well as one in front of an empty chair. This place is for the beloved dead, who are being honored by the meal. The first plate filled is given to them. The living eat in silence, thinking about their ancestors and others they cared about who have passed on. When the meal is over, the leftover food, including the food that was on the plate for the spirits of the dead, is taken outside and placed on the ground. Participants then tell stories and share memories about their beloved dead or sing a song honoring them. My ministerial study group this fall read a book called Native Country of the Heart. And in it, the Mexican-American author, Cherie Moraga, memorializes her mother, who recently died. In the absence of her living mother, Cherie dives into her mother's story, including her Mexican identity, and in doing so, discovers so much about herself as well. At my study group, we listened to an interview with Cherie Moraga on NPR on a program called Latino USA. The interviewer, Maria Hinojosa, says to Cherie at one point, "When you talk with your mother now, what is she telling you?" It was not a question like, "Do you still communicate with your mother?" Or, "Do you believe the dead have the ability to communicate with the living?" It was just understood. Of course, Cherie was still talking with her dead mother, but what was her mother saying to her? I love that. I often encourage the bereaved people that I work with to continue talking to their loved ones. And I ask if they have been visited by them in their dreams. My colleague, Aaliyah Kemmler, says, "In the 18 years I've served as minister of my small town congregation, I have led 96 memorial services, mostly for people I have loved. I didn't realize," she says, "how much the deaths would hurt. The longer I stay, the deeper I love, and the more I grieve." This seems so obvious, she says, but I was surprised by it. Another surprise, she says, has been how our beloved dead seem to make themselves known, how they seem to linger with us for a little while. Once, she says, after a memorial service, everyone left the church and gathered on the sidewalk in the sunlight of a still summer afternoon. As we stood there, a huge gust of wind blew down the street. We could see it coming, almost like a tumbleweed. For maybe 5 seconds, the wind was all around us and all over us. We turned and watched the gust blow down the street, and then it was completely still again. "There she goes," someone said. Another time, Aaliyah says, I was about to lead the memorial service for a man who shared a love of butterflies with his wife. Their home was filled with images of butterflies, and we had put a photo of one on the program. As I stood at the church door, a huge orange and black butterfly flew near. It circled me 3 times, above my head, around my shoulders, at my knees, and then flew away. When I told his wife about it, she nodded. "Butterflies have been all around me since he died," she said. Last spring, a beloved elder died who believed he would be reincarnated as a red-tailed hawk. Aaliyah told the congregation about his death at Sunday morning services. She had taped a picture of a red-tailed hawk on the front pew where he had always sat. While she was making the announcement, several people looked out the sanctuary windows and saw a large hawk soaring above the church. Over the years, Aaliyah says, I've heard many stories. Stories about dragonflies and rainbows and love songs coming on the radio at just the right moment. Maybe it's just coincidence. Maybe we're looking for signs so we can find them. But maybe those we love are nearer to us than we realize. Maybe love is vaster than the limits of our understanding. I believe that it is. Christine Robinson writes, "The long summer has faded now, and these first days of November mark the beginning of the coming of winter. The frost has taken our tender plants. Leaves have begun to fall from the trees. Geese begin to arrive from the north. The days are cooler, the weather unsettled, and the evenings are suddenly dark. Our children have played with death and fear. Christians have marked All Saints and All Souls days, both holidays commemorating the dead. And our Mexican neighbors have celebrated the Day of the Dead. We also honor those who have gone before us." And that is what we do this morning. We honor those who have gone before us. And we feel both the sorrow and the joy in the remembering of them. And we make death a part of our living. And we feel how the veil is thin between the worlds. If you are missing someone this morning, I invite you to come forward in a moment and light a candle for them on our altar. In that way, they will be present with us here today. As you wait to light your candle, think of what their life has given you. And even if it was complicated, think about what gifts they offered you and what of them you carry on. Some of you have lost many loved ones this year. And I ask that you light one candle to represent all of them. I could not fit as many candles up here as I wanted, although you see that I have tried. And if you could please light the candles at the back first so that we are not reaching over flames, that will be helpful. We're going to start with this section here, and when they have returned to their seats, we'll move to this section and this section and this section. It's also fine to stay seated and spend this time quietly thinking of those who have died. But let us begin to remember the dead. think for a moment how this weedy chaos, these beds of failed attempts, look to the wild things. It looks like food. It looks like shelter. Imperfect but earnestly done with best efforts, tools on hand, and our collective wisdom such that it was. It looks like a place of giving. Children and grown-ups and creation itself was tended here and fed. When we come to die, may each of our lives be like an end-of-season garden, a life of giving, of growing and feeding, a life where creation itself was tended, an imperfect life, earnestly lived to the best of our efforts, shelter and home and joy to those who crossed our paths. And may we use this season of late autumn, this occasion of All Souls, to remember dearly all those we have lost, those we have loved, all those who have gone before us into the great unknown. So long as we live, they too shall live, as we remember them. May it be so. Amen, and blessed be. Hands for our closing words. We take a breath, a moment here to remember all those who have gone before, to appreciate what light and love they have brought to our lives, and to recognize that so long as we live, they too shall live, as we remember them. Go in peace.